Previously, I did a video introducing the cast of The Longest Day to a younger audience than it had 60 years ago, which seemed to go over pretty well. Got a link in the upper right and in the description. Due to numerous reasons, however, it was incomplete. Most obvious is time. There are 147 names on the complete cast list, of which 60 are given screen credit, of which I managed to include 30 in 24 minutes. A lot of editorial decisions were needed to be made. Secondly, I'm American, so the video had a strong American bias. But YouTube is international, and I received numerous comments along the lines of, why didn't you say something about such and such? Well, mainly because I never heard of him. I'm sorry, but with few exceptions, I had never heard of 90% of the European actors in the film, much less have any familiarity with their body of work. The ones I was aware of, I included. I am now attempting to correct that. But there are still time constraints, so I need to prioritize who gets mentioned. 1, the handful of Americans that I couldn't identify before. I've found one of them, and I think another, but there still may be one or two more that I can't find and will be included just by name. 2, those who were mentioned in the previous comments. 3, the rest of those who received screen credit. They're marked with a C. It's backwards. A C down in the right-hand corner. And then anyone else who has an interesting story. Well, before we get going, I'd like to apologize in advance for my French and German pronunciations. All I know is for German, you growl like you hate everyone. And for French, you leave out most of the consonants and cram all the vowels together. And I apologize for those generalizations. And one other thing. This video is about the actors, not the characters they play or about the movie itself. Probably half the comments I received first time around didn't seem to understand that. Now this time, we will proceed alphabetically rather than order of appearance. Here we go! Arletty. Arlette Leone Bathiat did 62 films between 1930 and 1963, including Children of Paradise, Les Enfants du Paradis, which I understand is one of the most celebrated French films ever. It was filmed in early 1944 and released in 1945 after the liberation of France. She co-starred with Jean-Louis Barrault, who played the priest here. Ryan contradicted himself with the character's name, being Madame Barrault in the cast list, but Madame Levrault in the book. Patrick Barr, over 150 film and television appearances between 1932 and 1986. Highly regarded as a stage actor and had considerable success on television, but never got beyond character actor in films. including Dam Busters, Octopussy, Disney's Robin Hood, and The Lavender Hill Mob. Jean-Louis Barrault, 50 films between 1935 and 1990, but primarily known and idolized for his work on stage and as a mime. Starred with Arletty in Children of Paradise, as mentioned. Bourvil, born André Robert Remour. He took his stage name from the town of Bourvil in Normandy, not too far from Dieppe, where he was raised. He started as sort of a music hall vaudeville caricature of what we would probably call a hick or a yokel. I think Clem Cadiddlehopper for anyone who remembers Red Skelton. After 1956, he started getting more serious roles, most notably The Red Circle, although he did continue with lighter fare, such as Those Daring Young Men in Their Jaunty Jalopies. Wolfgang Büttner, one of the many undeserved screen credits. All he did was watch Rommel drive away. But again, over 150 TV and movie roles over almost 50 years. He was in at least 3 movies about the July 20th plot. Gary Collins, a fair to middling actor, mainly on television where he was ubiquitous during the 60s through the 90s, but found his greatest success as a game show panelist and talk show host in the 80s. Oh, and he was married to Miss America, which should count for something. Colin Lionel M., better known as Richard Dawson, is on the cast list as British soldier, uncredited, but after countless watchings and rewatchings, I've yet to spot anyone even remotely resembling him. Hogan's Heroes, A Match Game, Family Feud, yes, but I don't think he's actually in this movie. Leslie de Lespie. To quote Wikipedia, the piper to the Queen Mother was a position in the British royal household in which the holder of the office was responsible for playing the bagpipes at the request of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. The first piper to the Queen Mother was Leslie de Lespie, pipe sergeant of the London Scottish, of whom the Queen Mother was honorary colonel. Soon afterwards, he was appointed pipe major. Unquote. Fred Durr, screen credit but certainly not deserved. 5 roles in 4 years. Billed as U.S. Army Ranger Major, but I can't find any Ranger officer of any rank, anywhere. Mel Ferrer, one of the missing Americans. 50-year career as a well-respected actor, director, producer, not related to Jose Ferrer. Never a star, but a solid second lead. Married to Audrey Hepburn from 1954 to 1968. Now, I think it's this guy. Leo Genn, another one who received screen credit that I couldn't find anywhere. Who the heck is Brigadier General Edwin P. Parker, Jr.? But upon further picture comparisons, I believe he's the British officer Mel Ferrer's talking to. 2 missing persons in one shot. Quo Vadis, Moby Dick, 55 Days at Peking, and 82 more over a 40-year career. John Gregson, a journeyman actor making 68 movie and television appearances from 1948 to 1976, really big on TV in the 60s. Movies were mainly character roles, peaking in Night of the Generals. Also appeared in The Lavender Hill Mob, along with Patrick Barr. Actually, if you look at more Ealing productions of that period, you'll find a lot of the same names over and over. Paul Hartman, 133 movies from 1915 to 1969. And this was obviously as his career was winding down. Played Bismarck in the biopic of that title in 1940. Jack Hedley, copy and paste, 100 roles over 40 years, mostly television. Small movie roles in How I Won the War, Goodbye Mr. Chips, and For Your Eyes Only. Werner Hinz, I'm guessing at the pronunciation. There's no way of knowing if it's a long or short I, although I suspect Heinz would have an E in it. Another long and lustrous career, 101 movies from 1929 to 1985. Played Crown Prince Friedrich in Bismarck alongside Paul Hartman. And Michael Hinz even outdid his father with 119 appearances from 1959 to 2008, but he did a lot of television. The interesting thing here is that he was Werner's son playing the part of Werner's character's son. Now, Manfred Rommel himself, as an adult, was a really interesting person. You ought to look him up. Donald Euston. Even though this one's British, I'm still not sure how to pronounce it. Houston as the city in Texas, or Houston, like the street in New York. I'll go with Texas for now. Much like everyone else, made 93 appearances in movies and televisions from 1949 to 1984, heavily into TV in the 60s and 70s. His first starring role was his first theatrical appearance in the middle, The Blue Lagoon, in 1949. The first one was in 1923, and the third, of course, was Brooke Shields in 1980. And, oh yes, he actually was in the RAF in the war. Carl John. Sounds like a broken record. 94 appearances between 1932 and 1977. Lots of television in the 60s and 70s. Nothing in the list looks the least bit familiar. Patrick Jordan, mentioned briefly in part 1. So here's a more complete resume. 149 appearances from 1949 through 1995, still with an abundance of TV work from the 60s onward. Had a small role as a detective in The Pink Panther Strikes Again, and was the Norwegian agent who got gunned down while transmitting his report early on in Sink the Bismarck. Wish me luck. Till Kivi? I think Kivi. His name was originally Kiver. One of a small handful of actors without screen credit, but who actually contributed to the story. See also Ernst Schroeder and Heinz Reinke. Had an average career, 69 appearances over 50 years. Noteworthy were The Identifiable, How I Won the War, and as a guard in The Great Escape, which is ironic, since he was a POW and did escape for a few days. Alexander Knox, a very interesting gentleman. Born in Canada, moved to the U.S., started acting on stage, moved to the U.K. for a chance at better roles, spent much of his career moving back and forth between the U.K. and the U.S., depending on where the opportunities were and Senator Joe McCarthy wasn't. Back in Britain for good, he had parts in You Only Live Twice, Nicholas and Alexander, John Lennon's How I Won the War, and a recurring role in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. The usual 90-plus appearances, but this time more film than television. Fernand Ledoux, listed as playing Louis, but I don't recall anyone called that in the movie. His picture, however, looks like Michael Hardelay, the lawyer in the window, as Gert Frobe delivers the coffee. Another 89 movie appearances and 1 TV show. Christian Marquand, that was a letdown, only 63 appearances, with very few TV shows. Of those, I recognized only 3, the Brigitte Bardot classic and God Created Woman, The Flight of the Phoenix, the 1965 Jimmy Stewart version, and the extended Redux release of Apocalypse Now. Michael Medwin, another poser, listed as playing Private Watney. Again, I don't recall anyone call that in the movie. Comparing pictures, I suspect he's one of the 2 guys on Major Howard's glider, either the one singing Lambeth Walk or the guy next to him who's too nervous to fasten his helmet. I could easily be far wrong. 117 appearances from 1946 to 2008, including bits in Never Say Never Again and the Albert Finney version of Scrooge. Kurt Meisel, the usual German actor resume, with the addition of 22 movies and TV movies directed. Tony Mordente. Wow, only 10 acting credits. The only other one of note was as a shark in West Side Story, where he also served as a dance assistant, whatever that is. His real success came behind the camera as a TV director, most notably Rhoda, Seventh Heaven, Hardcastle and McCormick, and Walker, Texas Ranger, plus a slew of 1 or 2 episode stints, as well as a bit of choreography here and there. Might possibly also be the soldier trying to borrow money at the crap game, but I'm not sure. And back to Germany for Richard Munch. 101 appearances from 1951 through 1989, mainly on television after about 1970. Played General Jodl in Patton, and appear in the Bridge at Remagen, along with 3 other longest-day German alumni, Peter van Eyck, Hans Christian Black, and Heinz Reinke. Leslie Phillips. This is getting annoying. Someone who gets screen credit for a 15-second appearance as a character who has no name in the movie, but does on the cast list, and the only way to track him down is by comparing pictures. That quintessential British mustache gave him away. Of course, if I were British, I'd have recognized him. He's quite famous over there. 173 film and television appearances. Yanks, however, are likely only to know him by his voice, being the Sorting Hat, whatever that is, in the Harry Potter franchise. Sean Phillips. At least she didn't get screen credit, like many others who just had walk-on parts. She's the one who asks Captain Stagg if he wants more tea. This was the first theatrical movie role in a career that is still going strong. It would take a separate video to list all her accomplishments. Look her up on Wikipedia. U.S. audiences would know her best as the Reverend Mother in the 1984 Dune, as Mrs. Smiley in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and as Livia in I, Claudius. Maurice Poli, called Jean in the cast list, but I don't believe was ever addressed as that in the film. Janine's fiancé was named Leonard, and he was on a train to Paris at the time. So, This was only his second theatrical movie, but did quite well for himself afterward. Wolfgang Price, another major leaguer here with 162 film and television appearances, practically all post-war. Whether intentional or not, he tended to be typecast as a high-ranking German officer. He was von Stauffenberg in The Plot to Assassinate Hitler, an unnamed SS Major in The Cardinal, Kesselring in Anzio, General Hans Oster, one of the July 20th conspirators in General Oster, Traitor or Patriot, Rommel in Raid on Rommel, von Rundstedt in A Bridge Too Far, Jodl in the miniseries Ike the War Years, and, oh, this is a good one, von Brauchitsch, an old German general, in the Winds of War and War and Remembrance. Plus, more than you can shake a field marshal's baton at. Ron Randall, billed on the cast list as Joe Williams, but who's that? I either can't find anyone who looks like him, or I can find too many people who look like him. He's a good-looking guy, but a good-looking guy, if you can picture that. Born in Australia, caught tuberculosis, came to the U.S. for treatment at the Mayo Clinic. Started acting here, went back to Oz, did a few things there, and returned to Hollywood. Spent the rest of his career bouncing back and forth between the U.S. and the U.K., doing movies and lots of TV. Did a couple of Bulldog Drummond films, Kiss Me Kate, I Am a Camera, the non-musical predecessor to Cabaret, King of Kings, and scads of TV episodes in the 60s and 70s. Heinz Reinke, one of the few actors without screen credit who actually impacted the story. The usual 100-plus TV and movie credits, with heavy activity on TV, with a few long-running series in the early 2000s. Starred in a German TV movie of Waiting for Godot, and of course the usual The Bridge at Remagen, along with Till Keavy, Peter Van Eyck, Hans Christian Black, Richard Munch, and the previously missing George Segal. Madeleine Renaud, a mere 45 movies, but the vast majority of her work was on stage. She starred in a French version of the U.S. cult classic Harold and Maude, but the reason she's on this list is that she was married to Jean-Louis Barrault, who plays the St. Marigly's priest. So the father was married to the sister. Curious casting, Daryl. Georges Rivière, another picture comparison. I think it's Kiefer's number 2. Anyway, 47 movies in 25 years. I can't understand a single one of them. Norman Rossington. Here we go again. 134 appearances, mostly TV after 1960. The only recognizable credit I can find is as the Beatles' road manager in A Hard Day's Night. Fitting, since he was from Liverpool. Ernst Schroeder. Of his 81 appearances from 1940 to 1993, I can only make heads or tails of 2 of them. The Odessa File and The Plot to Assassinate Hitler, which also featured 5 other Longest Day pre-alumni. It was 7 years earlier. George Segal, one of the elusive Americans I couldn't find before. Probably due to all the dirt on his face and how much younger he would have been here than when I remember him from. This was only his second movie role. He went on to 129 film and television roles, most notably Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Owl and the Pussycat, and Fun with Dick and Jane. There's too much more to list. Heinz Spitzner, 52 roles over 25 years. All the titles and descriptions are in Germans. I can't say more than that. Peter van Eyck left Germany in 1931, just before Hitler came to power, and landed in Cuba. Came to the U.S. in 1937, met and was befriended by composer Aaron Copland, beginning a 6-year career in music as a lounge pianist and arranger and production assistant for Irving Berlin. Met Billy Wilder, who dragged him to Hollywood. Spent the war years playing German officers. After the war, returned to Germany, appearing in a number of French, English, and German films, generally of decreasing quality, until the mid-60s and The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and finally The Bridge at Remagen in 1969, dying shortly thereafter of a blood infection. Bernard Victor Vico von Bülow, a.k.a. Laureat. Very few movie roles, 17. Primarily a cartoonist and animator on television. His cartoon programs became more and more popular as he added live-action skits. He became a legend. Voted Germany's greatest comedian ever in a 2007 poll. This picture and the cast list are confusing. As far as I can tell, the older officer is a captain, and the younger one, who seems to be von Bülow, is a lieutenant. Now, it's much more likely for a captain to be an adjutant, a major or lieutenant colonel, even more likely, than a lieutenant, who would more likely be an aide. I suspect whoever posted this didn't know the difference between those two functions. Richard Wattis, 148 roles over a 30-year career. Obviously popular, but once again, I have no idea of which British paratrooper he was. I think there were only 2 actually shown, one confronting von Salmet and one helping the Padre look for his mass kit. Neither one really looks that much like pictures of Wattis I've seen, but I'd lean towards the von Salmet one if I had to pick. And finally, George Wilson. Wilson? That's not a French name. As Mayor Renault. The usual large number of roles, 118, over a long period of time, 62 years, but unknown west of the Atlantic. Except maybe for a supporting role in 1973's The Three Musketeers. And even that was an English-Spanish production. Whew! I think I did it. You know, I don't understand why people were or were not given screen credit. It obviously had nothing to do with the degree of their involvement in the movie. Oh well, it's not important now. Yeah, and the thing that strikes me is the careers of these actors. I don't think many of us here west of the pond realize that Europe has a thriving film industry. Looking through these resumes, I'm equally struck by the breadth of these actors' ranges. They play everything. Drama, comedy, action, you name it. Instead of specializing in a certain genre like most American actors do. And I'm glad the viewers of the previous video brought some of these fine folk to my attention and got me interested enough to go searching for the others. Thank you all so much. But we have come to the end, or das Ende, or la fin. And all that's left for me to say is thank you all for watching, and to beg for support. Comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And as always, I would appreciate so much more if you'd buy me a coffee. So, bye for now.